Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas Construction update video.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Giga Texas. It's Friday, the 14th of October, 2022. I cover quite a bit of territory today in this video, and in the video I give you a lot of narration and discussion about many very interesting things that we see. Now normally I would show you what some of those are here as part of the intro, but I made a last minute change just a few minutes ago. I was actually finishing up the video flying right up here at the north end of the building. And in amongst all of this material and all of these cranes, I saw something that I know a lot of people will be extremely interested in seeing. So without any further ado, take a look at these images that I just took here at the north end. What you're seeing are two brand new prototype Cybertrucks. They're covered with these white car covers, but they do have the Tesla emblems on them. And why did they bring them here to Giga Texas today? I'm not really sure. It may be related to the shareholders meetings next week, but it could also be part of the ramping up of production that's going on inside of Giga Texas. And we know that they've been doing quite a bit of preparation for the Cybertruck lines, and this may be an indication of just how far along they are. But anyway, I wanted to give you an exclusive first look at the Cybertruck prototypes that I saw right up here, right behind me. I hope that you enjoyed the rest of the video. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Have a great weekend.
My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Starting off on an early morning on the west side of the highway here at Giga Texas. One of the things I wanted to show you is some of the work on the right-hand side of the screen in that water management section between the road and the river. And also you can see some of the irrigation system now functional, watering the grass here in this little pond on the right-hand side of the screen. So let's get a little bit closer to the material storage, and let's look at what is going on over in this section today. We'll start off looking right at the center of the screen. You see those concrete lamppost base. These look like little Cybertrucks. These were used during the Cyber Rodeo on the west-hand side of the building, but then they were later removed so that they could widen the road. Looks like they're just about ready to finish getting rid of these, no longer needed. You can also see quite a bit of materials right in the center and bottom of the screen. These are parts and components that would be used inside as part of the production lines. On the center of the screen left, you can see some more components and equipment that have arrived, some of them in the blue and underneath that covered location. On the right-hand side of the screen, here are the bridge crane rails that were removed from casting, and it looked like they were reinforcing the tops of the concrete columns that these rails rest on, because the bridge cranes that they are using are either too heavy or they're going to be expanding to even larger ones. You can see some more vegetation on the left-hand side of the screen and some of the purple irrigation pipe. A lot more just materials in general in the middle part of this section. And then these trailers hold some of the materials and other equipment that's necessary for some of the construction around the site. So let's go ahead and move farther to the north, and we're going to take a look at this new clearing. Now, a couple of videos ago I showed you the beginning of this, and it has now progressed quite a bit more. What you see here is dump trucks bringing in dirt to continue to level off the grade. In addition, there's center dump trucks that are bringing in a gravel mix from off-site, and that's being put on top to help stabilize the soil. Now, sometimes this indicates a parking lot or maybe a preparation for another staging location for materials. Perhaps they'll be starting to relocate materials from the south end that we just looked at to come up here, so that maybe there'll be some resumed work on that foundation. Or perhaps this is going to be a foundation for another structure, of which I do not know what that may be at this time. But here's a really good look at some of the activity that is going on to prepare this location. And in the last week, or maybe 10 days, this has come along really quickly. Now we're maneuvering up to the material storage a little bit farther north. This has been used for about a year and a half, and it has continually changed the type of materials. What you see on the bottom left is old beams that were removed from General Assembly as they've been expanding and modifying the inside there for General Assembly lines 2 and 3. You can see some other materials, some HVAC components that were just passed. And then up here is a lot of steel that has been slowly stackpiled up in this section waiting for future use. Now there's two different kinds of steel. You see the gray steel. This is what has been recently brought, and I do believe that this is going to be used inside the east side of the battery cell 4680 production portion of the main factory, which you can see in the background in that northwest angled corner. A little bit to the left, you see brown steel. That was brought here about a year and a half ago, and I thought it was originally going to be used as part of the temporary electrical substation, but it never was, and it's just remained here all this time. Here's a good view of it as we pass over. I don't know what the plan is for this, but it looks like it's for a metal structure of some kind, so maybe we'll see that assembled soon. That was a good view of the factory from across the highway. Now we're going to fly down the length of the west side. Immediately to the left is the 4680 production portion of the building that I referenced earlier. You can see these cargo doors and this metal tank. That metal tank is for nitrogen, and they also have a tank inside for some other hazmat materials, and you can kind of just see right inside the doorways. You can see those yellow dividers that helps guide in some of the vehicles and other equipment that is brought for this portion of the factory, but all of that was in support of making the 4680s. Let's continue to fly along this side further to the south, and we'll take a look at what's going on near the main entrance. Here we're arriving at the main entrance on the west side. You can see those temporary ramps that have been installed. The glass doors still have the protecting white and red tape, and also you can see that fence because there is construction going on just inside that main entrance area. This is a really good view of the landscaping that is coming along very quickly now around the cyber wall that was installed as kind of an architectural feature. This looks like it's just a very nice place to have as far as the main entrance would be for maybe guests or other dignitaries that may arrive. Possibly this is going to be for parking for some of the senior staff as well. But as you can see, a lot of grass has been installed in addition to all of the trees and other shrubs. And it looks like the crews are still busy with installing more of the plants. And you can kind of see how this looks in relation to the main entrance as well. So let's continue a little bit farther to the south and take a look at the loading or receiving docks here that are busy with all of these trucks. And inside this portion of the building on the ground floor and extending up to the second floor is where we've seen quite a bit of rework to reconfigure this area to install General Assembly lines 2 and 3. And this would be additive to the General Assembly line 1 that is currently in operation a little bit farther north and making the Model Ys today. And speaking of Model Ys, you see this parking lot directly in front of us. This used to have quite a few Model Ys, and they've all been moved out from here, and I believe they've been moved over on the east side near the sedimentation basin where they're being stored. And they may be vehicles that needed additional parts And I'll show you that a little bit later in the video. But what you can see here is another one of these large dump trucks. It's recently brought some more of the dirt. You can see it piled up here. This is all being used for the trenching operation for these blue pipes. And I'll pull back a little bit to show you some more of the installation that is going on. Now, one thing I want to correct from my previous videos, you can see by this table here, the pipes that are being installed are blue. This is potable water or drinkable water. And I had mentioned in my previous video that I thought this may be connected over to the horizontal drilling pipe that was installed underneath the river, but that one is purple, and as you can see, that is a treated water pipe or maybe for irrigation. So these two pipes would not be connected together. So I hope that clears that up. So as we follow the blue drinkable water pipe being installed here on the south end, I also wanted to give you this view of the number of Model Ys that have been produced and stored here temporarily on the south end. The amount that's being produced is definitely on an increase. Again, I can't say exactly how many, but it is clear that the number of produced per day has definitely increased. Now here's a good view of the workers down with the blue pipe. They're installing what would be a connection point at that section. Also here you can see how the concrete removal is continuing on the east side of this concrete ramp, and crews are actually doing more of the saw cuts in this section right underneath the drone. And in just a little bit, I'll come back over and give you a closer look at the work that they are doing. But this saw cut allows them to easily remove the concrete while keeping the dust and the debris level down. The amount of steel stored on this east staging just continues to increase. Take a look at the workers next to those beams just to get an idea of the size of these steel materials. Now something large is being built, and I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but this is definitely something worth monitoring. You can see that they just started an excavation we just went over, and they're continuing to store the materials for the AIDA stamping machine that will be installed in the stamping extension on the south side of the building, where they're doing work inside with the isolation foundation to support that machine. As I mentioned, I'll bring back a view here of the work that's going on to mark and then saw cut the concrete. As you can see, a large section on the east side of this concrete lot is already cut, so all of this will be removed soon. And all of these Model Ys are going to have to be relocated to the east side to allow that construction to continue. I'm flying to the south part of the pond just to show you where the other steel materials are being stored and how this appears today. And there's still quite a bit here. You can see some of the empty section in the middle of the screen that has been removed over to the east side, and the workshop that was there was also removed as well. So I'm going to reposition the drone to give you just a nice overall view of the south end and of the factory, just to see how that looks today. And we'll prepare to come down and take a look at that horizontal drilling location in just a second. Now here we can see two areas of excavation where the crews are working, and there are trench boxes in both of them, which indicates that they're working on some of the pipe, and that's to help prevent the ground from caving in onto the workers. Now these workers next to this pipe gives you a pretty good idea of the size. This is the 36-inch or 1 meter diameter pipe, and you can see that some of it was painted purple, and that's part of the treated water that could be used for irrigation systems as well. And you also see this trench box where they're preparing another connection. It will be interesting to see where this is routed and how it connects to the building and to the surrounding community. This is also a good view of all of the steel parts that are on that material storage here on the east side. And I'm going to pull away just a bit to show you some changes on this material storage a little bit further to the north. What you see is a little bit of trenching going on in the south end with some pipes. And also they've returned the recycling trucks. Those are those black trucks with the parts in it. Those are extra pieces from the stamping press operation, and those will be eventually recycled. I also wanted to show you a much better and closer view here where the temporary platform used to be. You can see where the windows are removed and sort of the stains that are on the concrete wall. Right next to it is that platform that we saw constructed on the south end, and it was held down there for about 2 months until it's recently been relocated here. You can see some of the steel columns being prepared and the footings as well so that they can mount this platform, and it will become a permanent mounted platform to load materials up into the second floor of the body in white. So I'm glad to finally be able to give you a really good view and explanation of what is going on there. We're on the roof of the body in white section. You can see the HVAC ducts here and some of the frames that they are using nearby. And you can also see how the openings of the roof are continuing to transform. You can see the 4 rectangular sections that have been cleared away. They will be cutting these open and then installing some of the ducts, very similar to what you see over the large square section. What you see here also is the retaining wall around the opening. It looks like it's almost completed except on the south end, and this is how they are going to be joining the roof membrane to this section eventually once it's all completed to have it weatherproofed. But a lot of work here and progress on the roof of the body in white section today. So this is a good look at this smaller parking lot with all of the Model Ys been relocated here. Now they actually were relocated, or at least started doing so, about a week ago, maybe a little bit more. But this is a really good view, and it looks like they're using this at least temporarily to store some of the Model Ys. Now again, these may be ones that are constructed but are needing some parts until they can be offered to customers, or maybe they're tests, or maybe there's some other explanation of why they're being stored here temporarily. The east side new car staging and transportation lot is also active. Quite a few Model Ys over here. And just before I arrived on this section of the property, there were trucks picking up more Model Ys and heading off to the north to the railhead up at Hutto, Texas. I also wanted to give you a view of this part of the parking lot. You can see quite a few of the light poles have now been installed here, so nearly finishing, and you can see another excavation work with some more conduit, possibly to continue to extend the ability to add light poles to this section where all of the cars are, and you can see there are no light poles at this point in time. But they're certainly moving light poles in rapidly, and also you can see a truck taking away more Model Ys just now and another truck arriving. This is a really good view of the warehouse on wheels and how it appears today in its expanded form. I'm not counting all of the trailers, but there are several hundred of them here. And as mentioned before, this is a direct correlation to the rate and volume of production that is going on inside, as these trailers bring the parts needed to build the cars, stored here temporarily until they're used or needed into the factory, and then they are returned to the suppliers. We're now on the southeast side. You can just see how this expanded material storage warehouses for workers and trailers continues to change. And I also wanted to give you a closer look at this large workshop near this crane and the number of steel components that continues to grow here. Now some of these are actually columns, so it suggests that these are going to be for some sort of construction, but where, I don't know. The workers next to some of the steel gives you a really good idea of the size. It's very interesting just the number of places around the site that have a lot of steel materials for building. And so something is definitely in the works, and it will be interesting to see where all of this comes together. And you'll see a little bit more to the north of the battery cathode plant. And speaking of which, we're approaching it from the southeast heading northwest. And you can see more work here with the blue water pipe, and this is drinkable water as we discussed earlier. and it's a long trench along the east side of the building. Another thing that's very noticeable is the number of wall panels that have been installed. The open sections that they're leaving are to allow for large materials or large equipment to be installed. And you're going to see right now on either side of this large ground section where they're putting in these deep foundations and this highly reinforced slab, that the wall panels are a little bit to the north of here. So what I expect is that they're going to leave this open until they are able to bring the large equipment that will be mounted on these huge foundations that are being constructed right now. And you can also see a lot of rebar, so it looks like with the formwork there and the rebar, we should see concrete very soon. And as mentioned, you can see the crews installing the wall panels at this northern part from that ground slab section, and then continue to work to the north. This slab that we saw being constructed and filled in a couple days ago now has a steel structure going up. There's also a section on the north end that has rebar sticking up from the slab, so it suggests that it's going to be a reinforced section of this particular building. And what it is, I'm still not sure. But we also see quite a bit of activity up in this area, this clearing. And I'll give you just a good view here. You see some workshops on the left where they're preparing to put some roofs between the trailers. You see a lot of components near these workshop locations, and also what looks like possibly some columns. You see some more steel parts being stored here, and it looks like components for another very large crane have arrived, and we'll see this assembled pretty soon. That's what all the yellow parts are on all of these trucks. We also see these green, very heavy lift trailers with some materials or maybe equipment. Now, I don't know, but these look like they might be about the right size for those heavily reinforced foundations that we were just talking about in the center of the building. But we'll have to continue to monitor to find out. You can also see near that yellow crane quite a bit more steel parts being stockpiled here as well. This gives a good view to see how the clearing is continuing to change. And it looks like there was a little bit of rain here very recently, but otherwise many of the ponds that used to be here have been filled in as well. So with all of the steel, the equipment, and what's going on with the land, it still looks like there's going to be some sort of construction up in this section. This is a good view of all those steel parts that I mentioned that are being stockpiled up in this area as well. So let's wrap around to the west side of the building where you can see quite a bit of activity, some of the materials that are going on. There's several cranes that are in operation. You can see the temporary loading platforms on the left-hand side. You can see new trailers on the right-hand side where that clearing has just recently been made. And this concrete apron looks like they're still preparing for this to eventually be filled with concrete. A little bit of trench work, maybe some rework is going on before they get ready for the concrete. Another wall panel being installed on this side, and some have speculated the open section that you see, that thin section, may be for some sort of louvers, maybe for ventilation, but we'll have to continue to monitor and to see if that actually comes to pass. But several viewers have mentioned that, and I think that at least sounds reasonable to me. This is also a good view of the clearing on the left with the new trailers that have started to arrive. So perhaps this is going to be where some of the contractors are going to have their trailers for operation as they continue to build out the battery cathode plant. So I hope you enjoyed that tour of the battery cathode plant. So let's reposition over the Martin Marietta batch plant to the electrical substation construction site and see what is going on over there today. This angle gives a really good view of how the electrical substation construction site looks today. And there's some interesting developments that I'm excited to show you. Coming in from the right of the screen towards the center, you can see large steel parts of these very tall and very big power poles, very similar to the ones that you see already installed. And as I look to the right, you can see more of these have arrived. Now these are the parts needed to be installed onto these circular mounts that you can see two right here. And these will allow these very large power poles to be installed that will allow them to connect electricity to the electrical substation. Here you see the rebar cages, the circular cages that have been built for the drilling and bore to help support the footings. You can see all of the square footings have been constructed right now, and they're starting to install steel on top of them. And a lot of these steel parts that you see being installed will support the electronic components and wiring and some of the circuit breakers and insulators necessary for the electrical substation. You see another area being prepared with footings right now, and the drill is idle at the moment, but I would expect to see it making more bores to make more of the footings. And this pullback gives you just a good view of how this appears today and how it's beginning to reshape, particularly on the north end with all of the installation of the materials. The control room has all of the walls and roof installed. Looks like the doors now too, so most of the work will be inside out of sight. And I want to show you these two large rectangular sections are now getting what I believe is a mud base, and that's kind of the bottom part of the fill, and then they will put rebar on top of that, and then they will fill it back in with more concrete. And once this is done, it will be prepared and ready for some pretty heavy machinery to be installed in that particular section. This is a good view of some more of the pipe work that has been stockpiled here and some of the electronic components off to the right of the screen. As we approach the northeast corner of the casting machine structure, you can just see how the castings continue to be made and temporarily held on the outside. No, I still have not seen any IDRA 9,000 gigaton gigapress parts being delivered, so hopefully we'll see that in the next week or two, but I wish I could tell you otherwise, but no. And this is just the area between the parking lot and the road where they're continuing to reconfigure it with some pipe work and sidewalks and other work to get this area ready for the desired purpose. I'm going to give you a really good view of some of the activity on the north end of the paint shop. You can see the cranes are very active. More materials, sort of these black boxes right next to the fence, have arrived. Some other materials wrapped in green and white. You can see one large piece of equipment in that white getting ready to be picked up by the crane. And one of the things I noticed right now in the background is these very interestingly shaped white wrapped items next to the door. And this doorway actually goes into where the plastics manufacturing would be. But I'm going to give you a really good close look here with the drone. And what I think these may be are test bodies for the Cybertruck. They're wrapped in a protective shipping container, and then they have this white wrapping on top of them. You can see the Tesla emblem, at least on the one farthest from the drone. And usually what they do with these is they use them for part of the assembly and calibration of production lines. And they did something very similar with Model Y bodies about May and June of last year as well. So I think this is a great indication of what's going on inside the factory that we cannot see, and I hope that you enjoyed those views. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I very much appreciate your support.